talk about is the startup mindset. And it seems like it's accepted that if you invest in a bunch of companies as an investor, which I am, one will do really well to incredibly well, two might maybe okay, and the rest of them will be a loss. And then there's many more companies that don't get funded at all. And I actually think that we can flip that if you have the right mindset. I think 90% of all startups can be at least a viable going concern getting a reasonable return. Maybe not a moonshot, but that would be better, right, than going down. So a little bit about my background. I've started 7 companies now, 7 different businesses. I've had exits from a few $1 million to hundreds of millions of dollars, well, to 9 figures. And that's absolutely fantastic. And I never took $1 of outside investment money for any of my companies. Not even $1. And I didn't hunt for money. I was the kid that got kicked out of the house at the beginning of my senior year in high school. And it was a non-event for me. I was working full-time as a cook. My rock and roll band was starting the gig. I was making money. In fact, throughout the 80s, a couple of those years, my bands that I played in, played over 300 nights. Imagine that. That's how I made most of my income. Exactly. Just like that. It was a tremendous amount of fun. I don't count it as one of my 7 businesses, but it was like my first business. We had a sound, like the stage crew, all of that. And so it was kind of a big deal. Now, 3 of the companies I rolled up, and they were in the aerospace industry, and sold it for my biggest exit in 2016. And I thought, well, the picture tells 1,000 words. In 2006, this is what the shop looked like. Not that remarkable. The floor is nice and clean. Mark's a lot younger in that picture looking than he is today. And then virtually the same camera angle, fast forward 4 years, we built a boat in a bottle. And we took over a couple of additional buildings down the street because we were growing so fast. And I started a pretty robust wellness program around this time, and I jokingly said it was mostly so people could fit through the equipment, get between the equipment. And then fast forward 3 years, we're growing so fast, we built this 200,000 square foot building at the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. And I took this picture with my iPhone on a Wednesday afternoon, and we started moving in Monday that week. We were 85% operational in 3 days. Imagine 500 people just scrambling to get all this stuff set up. By the end of the week, close to 100% operational. So an amazing culture, just an amazing journey. And we had tens of millions of dollars worth of inventory sitting on the shelf, very capital intensive, and again, never had to raise $1 of outside investment money to make it happen. Would you rather keep more of your business or give more of it away? Keep it, right? Exactly. And when I got into the bigger building, I was able to do wellness right, and so I put this gym in place, and I told the employees, if you train 2 days a week for an entire month, we'll pay 100% of the health insurance premium the following month. And if you don't, we'll pay 80%, you pay 20%. And it costs about $600,000 a year to maintain the program, but the net savings of healthcare is $1.5 million. What I didn't realize is that you can't give people supplements or doctor visits and make them healthier. Movement seemed to be the biggest deal. Plus, emotional energy, mental, physical, way more productive than all the other employees. It was just incredible, running through this. And then I figured out a way to actually objectively measure every single employee and how they connect culture to financial results and their performance and the goals that they were charged with achieving in their role inside the organization. So this actually represents over 500 team members, and we rank everybody, and there's a lot of room for improvement. And the cool thing about it, we repaired, overhauled, and manufactured aircraft parts. We were doing business with about 2,000 customers in 60 countries around the world. I went to most of them building a business. Anybody interested in an international business and traveling and doing all that? How cool. It's like we're in the Middle East going through all these different countries. Then you're off to China, then you're in South America, then you come back and you shoot down to Australia. A lot of fun doing it. And even with all this room for improvement, there wasn't a competitor on the planet that could beat us in the core product we focused on because we did this. So, startup conditions for my first business, the one that kind of led to that story I just told, closure to sell, we had 30 days. We we had one customer that was 90% of our business, and there was a buyer that came to us and said, this is less than $1 million, almost $700,000, $800,000 a year, and said, I want an all-expense paid trip to Las Vegas whenever I want it. If you don't give it to me, I'm going to take all the business out of your shop and move it to another one. What would you do if you were asked that question? Of course I said no. There's no way. 6 months later, all the business went away. I was a supervisor managing 25 people, went down to 3. And my boss said, close it to sell, you got 30 days. Couldn't find anybody to buy it. There's always creative ways. You don't need money. I said, hey, I want to go this direction that you don't believe in. Nobody's interested in buying us. I'll assume the debt from the creditors, $200,000. I'll put my house up as collateral. And if I turn it around, I'll pay you an additional $400,000 of paper debt we couldn't afford to pay. And he said, yes. And he bragged to his friends, he stuck this kid with a bunch of debt and I would flail for a year and go out of business. Well, it was a totally different story than that. It really worked out. We had no choice but to prove product market fit. Like, literally no choice. Because it had to improve it. I mean, you go out there and they pay you for that product or service. And that's what we use in paid for operations. The first year, full year, we did $360,000 in sales and almost went out of business 15 times. But boy, was that fun. And it's amazing how not having money makes for incredible decision making and sort of a hyper presence. I felt like a walking spreadsheet with every element of what I thought it would take to make it successful, just coursing through my veins. Like, I couldn't slip any. Imagine if I had a bunch of money in the bank, I could relax a little bit and kind of wait. No way, couldn't do that in any way, shape, or form. And the 2 guys left standing with me. I said, hey, I've got this great idea, and they agreed to let me take the company. I can't pay you the first year, but I'll give you some equity. So each got a small part of the company. And one of them said, I'll never forget this, this is going to be great, I know it'll work, sign me up. And the other guy said, this will never work, we don't have money, equipment, we don't have customers, but sign me up anyway, I just want to see what's going to happen. And that guy got a check for more than $30 million when I exited. That wouldn't be bad, right? It worked out, In fact, I had a dinner sort of celebrating for the senior leaders that made that happen a couple of weeks ago in my home studio. And we flew some people in that were in Singapore, and we laughed so incredibly hard that night on all the stories, and something occurred to me. The harder it got, the harder we laughed. And I look at some businesses, the harder it gets, they start pointing fingers and all that stuff goes on. You know you have the right team, and the harder it gets, the harder you laugh. So that was an interesting lesson. Now, the current business that I'm still running, there's 4 things that we do. I won't spend very much time here, but I run, and my team members run Execute CEO Mastermind. So it's a different mastermind than Vistage or YPO and all the others that are out there. And that we're focused on companies that are planning to grow incredibly fast. And these members, we limit it to 8, believe they grow personally and professionally when they're leaning in to help other leaders grow their companies. And then we implement something I call the MIND methodology, and I developed this operating methodology, which there's a free book here if anybody wants to grab it at the end of this. And this helps companies improve their most important number faster. We'll go a lot into that. We sell leadership content, and then angel and private equity investments. I'm an investor. I'm invested in a lot of different companies, have millions of dollars deployed. I love playing the game. All the way from startup to established real estate, it really doesn't matter. Now, proving product market fit. I think this is probably the biggest challenge, and I'm going to kind of go through here, and at the end I'll sort of summarize what I think the right mindset is for anybody that's a founder of a startup. But my biggest mistake was not proving product market fit. So the short story on this is that in 2008, I meet Jack Welch. Anybody not know who that is? Okay, everybody knows who that is. So CEO of the century, manager of the century, all of it. And I'm sitting in this room. We all pay $10,000 a set. There was 100 leaders in the room. And on day 1, and I'm managing just coming off a $10 million a year, and most everybody else is managing $1 billion or more in business. And he said, somebody from each table state your mission and your supporting values, because that was really important to Jack, really important. And nobody at my table knew their stuff. Giant oil company, construction company. And I said, well, I know it. It's in my bones. And we get called on first. The podium's here. Jack says, hey, go for it. And I said, well, our mission we developed to tell customers in a compelling way why they should do business with us. and tell every employee why they get a paycheck. Because if we don't do that well, our jobs are in jeopardy. And I said, well, our mission is to safely reduce aircraft operating costs. Because that's great. What are your values? And I said, well, we threw values out 9 years earlier because they were too subjective. And the top value when we threw it out on the list was integrity. And I remember asking 10 employees when we did it back then, it was like 70 employees, how are you applying integrity to make this organization measurably better? And I got 10 crazy answers that said I completely wasted my time. We had beautiful wallpaper around the facility. So that turned into high-performing employees throughout our organization do what they say they will, or they have a personal commitment to the end result. They're respectful, honest, and straightforward. I'll remember this stuff forever because we've lived and breathed it, and every team member had an example for each one twice a year of how they applied it to make us measurably better. They were really cool in terms of connecting culture to financial performance and customer experience going through. And then, going forward here, Jack says, okay, well, that's pretty amazing. And we go to lunch on the first day, and he sits next to me. He didn't go off this whole table. I said, nobody's got this right ever. I've done this thousands of times. How did you do it? So we started a relationship. The next morning I wake up and he says, I want you to come to Florida. And we spent 9.5 hours going through my operating methodology. And he said, this is the best business management system I've ever seen. If I had it at General Electric, I would have put it in there. And so I thought, okay, we have something here. And I'm speaking to large groups, and all these CEOs are getting excited. So I thought, well, what would I need to build? And I had software, but how robust would it need to be to handle 400,000 employees? So I built this thing, spent a lot of money on it, and guess what? Not one large enterprise did it. And I was talking with A.G. Lafley, Procter & Gamble, and a bunch of others. It's almost as easy as, I would say, just about as easy as asking any of you, would you like to buy a heart transplant so you can perform 20% better? Like, nobody would buy it. So I set out on this journey to come up with a methodology that would work for any company, any team of any size, anywhere, and that's in my book, the Mind Methodology. But guess what? This mistake, last year I wrote off $27 million that I poured into it. I just wrote it off. The net effect is way better than that. And I've learned so much where I can see a path in the next 5 to 7 years of generating more than that in annual profits based on what I've learned. That's a pretty big lesson, right? 27 million. What could all of you do with that, with your companies? And then last year, liking your ideas more than the market. I get pitched a lot, and I had a guy a couple of weeks ago say, I've got this amazing idea I want to run it by you. He said, well, I want to push critical data to your calendar app. And I said, well, tell me more. And he said, well, it's going to be this, and that, and here's how it'll make a difference. And I told him I would never do that, but I could see if you texted critical data every leader in my organization and others at the right time, it could move the needle, and here's how to think about it. He spent the next 50 minutes of the hour trying to tell me why I was wrong. So he wasn't listening at all to what the market was saying. So really important is to connect with the market, get real information. Don't try to spend all your time telling everybody why they're wrong. The better the product market fit, way easier to run the company. An A+ team with a wrong product market fit won't go anywhere. A C team with the right product market fit, they can just go like crazy and make lots of mistakes along the way and slip it away. Be as respectful and thoughtful with investors' money as you would your own. If you had $1 million to invest in your company and it was a significant portion of your retirement money, would you do it? Right? I mean, that's really the question. So it's amazing how when I get pitched, there's just one spin after another, coming at me. Oh, it's great. We just need a little bit of money, 100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is, and we already have traction. We just need this to get over the hump. And I say, okay, well, I'll watch it for a while. A year later, I follow up. Well, yeah, we weren't quite right, but we're there now. We're totally there. And then a year later, the same thing. They didn't figure it out. So I think it's really important to be honest with investors. And the challenge here is that we can't help you if you're not honest. We can't. And some of these startups, I look into it. They have an advisory board. It sounds great, right? Here's all these amazing people with great titles. I attend one of the meetings, and it's like a love fest for the product. And all the advisors are saying every company should do this. This is incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And I said, well, excuse me, do you do it in your company? Oh, no, this. So what are you talking about here? Like, what would it take to do it in your company? What would give you enough perceived value to actually do it? And then the real conversation started. Does that make sense? But in the mind of the CEO and a couple of the other founders, if we're seen as having these people being part of us, we'll just get more money and be more successful. That completely misses the boat. This should be all about creating a ton of value out of the real world. Does that resonate? Everything should be about that. And then you have to do the critical work. I see a lot of founders, they hire people, all the folks nod and say, I totally get it. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then the CEO or founder says, okay, great, I got that off my plate. I don't need to worry about it. Yes, you do until it's up and running and established, and you fully operationalize when things are going well. That aerospace company example, the case study I went through, managing the startup piece of it, incredibly hard. Managing 50 to 100 people, not quite as hard, but still pretty darn hard. Managing over 500, 15 hours a week max. Do it. I don't know if that sounds right to you, but that's exactly how it played out. Once everything is set and working, it's great, but until it is, you have to lean into the critical work. Nobody better than you to prove and sell the value of what you're doing. And when I started out of the gate, I hit the road 8 months each year, just sell, and man, it really paid off, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. You can't get rid of that responsibility from yourself. Now, my experience is that I look at my $27 million write-up. I hired lots of really smart people. Did they get it? Yeah, they nodded. You're going to help me solve this problem? Yeah, I've got the product manager building the giant software team. Oh yeah, we're going to do all the right work. And none of it worked. And on the way out, they would say things like, well, I knew what to do. Nobody listened to me. It was never their fault. They didn't own it at all. Now, this is all my fault, whether it loses or wins, and I'm the one that's organizing all this effort. But it's why I love team members will take your money and not believe in your chance of success. And they'll just do stuff, to get that paycheck. And then, would your team invest? I used to ask this question back in the aerospace company, 65 leaders that had people that reported to them. They're working with somebody a lot longer than I think they should because they're just not performing. And finally, I started asking the question, if it was your money, would you pay them? And instantly, every single one of them said no. Said, oh my gosh. So you're totally cool wasting company money. And by the way, your bonus, because I always shared a lot of the profits back with all the employees, they were totally okay with it. And once I kept asking that question, they started thinking that way. And then they did the most caring thing they could do. They took these team members that weren't performing and helped them find a job somewhere else in the organization or in another company that's a better cultural fit and matches their capability. But one of the least caring things we can do is leave people in place that aren't performing, right? It doesn't feel good for anybody, and everybody knows. So okay, well, let's go from there. If you ask all of your team members as you're building your startups here, would you invest in this company, a significant part of your retirement savings? If yes, please tell me why. If no, tell me why not. And then the next question is, what would it take for you to invest if you feel really comfortable that this is going to give a great return for your family's retirement someday? Does that resonate? Right? And this is a really big deal. Like if you're putting a team together, we want people to believe in what we're doing and they would invest if they had it to invest. So that was critical. And then, building valuable companies is just hard. It's just hard work. I released another book last week with my co-author Scott Donnell, and it's titled Value Creation Kid: The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. Does that make sense? We have all of the parents these days, not all, but probably a majority of them that want to take all the struggle away from the kids. I struggle, you shouldn't have to struggle. Oh my gosh, I did a good thing. And I know so many people that have, a couple of kids living in the basement in their mid to late 20s with no plan to ever move out. Great job taking all the struggle away. And so we came up with this concept of this value creation cycle. And I started pulling fees at 6 years old, 25 cents an hour, a long time ago. And built that capability, got confident, created value from it, then shoveling snow, and bonds and paper routes, and all the way through, all the way to this your exit. And I don't think I'm anywhere close to done and how much value I can create. But it's all about that. Struggle to get a capability. What is the capability that you want so you can create value? Build confidence, don't stop there, and then create value. Same thing for adults. I think a lot of times in companies, we're taking all the struggle away from adults. And as a founder, what capability do you want? And what kind of struggle are you willing to go through to get that capability? And then how's that going to build your self-esteem and confidence? And how are you actually going to use it to create more value? It's an interesting question, right? So think about that. This is so important for the kids, but I think it's equally important for adults. You know, I always look at it and say, as an employer, I'm paying 100% of what I agreed to pay. 100% to every employee that's ever worked for me. And I've hired thousands of people over the years. 100%. Why is it okay for them to deliver 60% or 30%? Why is that okay? But it's supposed to be okay. If you're a bad employer, if you ask them to actually do what they agreed to do, while you're keeping 100% of your inventory on. I never have had trouble having this conversation. I never beat anybody up. It's like, okay, get it. I hired you to do this. You're performing here. I told you what would happen. Thank you. Goodbye. And that's the end of it. So anyway, I think culturally that's a pretty big piece. I think integrity is good. Personal responsibility is good. People should really embrace those things. And as employers, we should expect that from our teams. And in the startup land or world, wow, 80-hour weeks were normal for me out of the gate. Never felt like work. I loved it. We need teams willing to do that. So learn to love and trust the struggle. And then, what startup or early stage would you invest in and why? I think that would be a great exercise for you to kind of listen and go through it. And so I got this interesting idea. I was having coffee a few months ago with a friend of mine. And I run these CEO mastermind groups, totally different format, applying my mind methodology to help each of them grow their companies faster. And we said, there's all these kids we know in our community that have traction coming out of high school. So that's really cool. Here's one kid that at 16 home Christmas lights with a friend made $38,000 that season. Yay, that's not bad at 16. The next year, $138,000. The next year, last year, $240,000. And now he's branching out. He's 19. He's out of high school. He's branching out, and he's changing out older incandescent lighting for LED lighting in office buildings. He's got all these ideas. He's learned to hustle. If you learn to hustle, he totally gets it. Like the most important part, learn to hustle and you can do basic math. I put all this in and I got something left over. All the other stuff you can teach. What's an LLC? How do you put an employment agreement together? What does vesting mean? I mean, these are the questions that are coming. So we've identified 6 kids that have this kind of 2 or 3 years of traction coming out of high school. And we're going to put together junior CEO groups. And my goal is, each one of my CEO members will sponsor one of these junior CEO masterminds. How incredible. They're just beyond excited. So we're going to launch the first pilot in July. And I know that 90+% of these kids are going to make it. Now, maybe it's not wildly sexy, but they're going to be on Forbes someday and the latest tech thing. And anybody see that article about the 30, under 30 or whatever in Forbes and how many are in jail and all that? It's like we're admiring the money. We're not admiring value. It's like how I'm seen and how much money I made. That's all that seems to be important. When I see founders pitching me that that's their goal, I'll never touch it. But if they're passionate about creating value in the world, like these kids coming out of high school that I'm mentioning, one of them has a company called Move It or Lose It. We'll move furniture out in the Phoenix, we'll move it back in, we'll move it anywhere you want in the Phoenix metro area. Lose it, we'll take it to the dump, or we'll take it, we'll sell it and share the revenue with you. Similar results as this other kid that I mentioned, hanging Christmas lights. So we've got all these stories, and we're going to start this group. But I would feel comfortable investing literally in all of them. 90+% are going to make it because they're focused, learn to hustle, they can do basic math, and they're connecting with a value, perceived value as product market fit out in the world. Interesting. I go to startup events and it's all about how you're seen and be confident. So when you raise money, you get money. What'll get me excited about pouring money, investing money into a startup is how passionate they are about this founder and the team about creating value, and they can prove it. They can actually prove it. So anyway, I think it's going to be a really cool pilot. What do you think of that idea? So to kind of recap here, I think the startup mindset for a 90% chance of success, prove this product market fit before taking investor money. And this whole part about being completely honest with investors, I think it's okay to say, I've got this idea, I think the world needs it, I have a proven product market fit, but I love your money based on your belief in my ability to figure it out. At least now we're being honest about it, right? But there's so many ways to package and test things to get out there and make sure we're proving product market fit. Do that first. Deploy investor money as you would your own. So many early on when I was giving out, I would call it dumb money. My friends say, oh yeah, I've done my due diligence, and you should invest too. It's like, I put out a few $1 million in situations like that, and when they went down, the founder said, well, that's just how the game's played. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I didn't feel for a second that they got how important this responsibility was. And all you have to do is do that once or twice, and no smart investors will probably ever invest in you going forward. So it's your reputation. And then build a team that would invest their own money. Lean into that critical work. You're the best person to do it. You can't delegate it. And don't act like a victim when it's not going well if you delegated it. That's really all. And then learn to sort of love and trust the struggle. And then this last point, show up every day to create real value. And that's what it's about. Right? Best value wins. I wish we didn't call capitalism capitalist, because it seems like it has a sort of a negative connotation when people talk about it. And that happens because they confuse it with crony capitalism and now woke capitalism. I wish we called it value creationism, where best value wins. I want this level, equitable playing field across the world. I'm never going to be that, but I want to keep fighting for it. And best value wins every single time. Capitalism or value creationism has lifted well over 1 billion out of poverty in the last 50 years. Incredible. What have we really done this way? And I don't even think we're realizing 10 to 15% potential in this country or the rest of the world of what we can do if we could just have this creating value mindset going on. So that needs to be the biggest passion. And then last thing here, if you want a copy of my book, it's up here. It looks like there's probably enough copies for everyone if you want to grab it. The audio book, I recorded it in my music studio, and I actually record 25-minute interviews after every chapter for more insights and background. So I recommend that. And, not to give it away, but I will, at the end of the recording, I grabbed my guitar and I just did an impromptu 3.5-minute guitar solo. So that's all the way at the end of the book. So you got that. And with that, I hope you got some value out of this to help your mindset to be even more successful to go down this journey. And I just would love to ask a question. I'd love it if you would answer it. What's your biggest takeaway listening to this presentation? And if you have an answer, come on up, grab the mic so they can all hear you. Yeah, come on up.
Oh, okay. I can project.
Okay, go for it.
I think my biggest takeaway is that everything I've been doing up to this point has been a lot of patting myself on the back to say that, you did it, but you could have done more. Right? And so there's to say that, next time around, that go the extra mile. I say that, up until now, all of the self-scrutiny that we've done, it really wasn't enough. That maybe it's time that we take another look.
Okay, so it changes how you think about creating value.
Exactly.
Where you spend your time. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
hands down the biggest takeaway that I got from this, I think in today in general, is building the team. So I do producing, do film sometimes, and before I do a film, I have a vision of a film, and I will be like, this is the vision, are you behind it or not? And if you're not, there's the door. And so I liked the question of, would you invest in it with your own money? Why or why not? Because a lot of people, like, if you bring somebody in who just wants a paycheck, like, everything's a struggle. And if everybody is not, like, on the same page, I always follow the business model of the Ritz-Carlton, which is almost that same exact mindset. So I really like that. It's like, okay, why would you invest your money into this? And if there is a pause or anything like that, it's just not something I would want to do any kind of business or partnership with. So that was a huge mindset shift for me today. Thank you.
One more, then I'd like to take a few questions if you have them.
For me, the biggest takeaway was what you said about kids and their struggles. Your mom played with words, and one of them, he's not good at traditional schooling and education, but he has a lot of ideas and he wants to constantly build things. And he asked me, how do I sell this? How do I? So what you exactly said right now, I'm going to try to see how I can bring that out in his life instead of trying to tell him, no, go do your math or go read your books. I really like that bit. I think that's great.
I love that. Thank you. And if you're interested in that, the book is Value Creation Kid: The Healthy Struggles Your Your Children Need to Succeed, and parents actually. What we've done in there is an approach to operationalizing value creation in the family. And how do you do it, right? Not a bunch of motivational nudges, but really create an environment where kids can discover their value creation superpower. Wildly important. Any questions?
I have one. Yeah. So I'm a VP of people during the day, right? So I work with lots of people in manufacturing capability. And there is this trend, I'm sure if you're employing people, you picked up on this, of generally an entitlement, where you would ask somebody to do something, so they agree to do, it's part of their job, or they need them to be a team player, and they're like, you should thank me for showing up, or you should be indebted that I'm here, I can go work anywhere. And so I personally love part of reconsidering how to have employees or team members think through their values, right? I think that could be a mind hack that could get you more aligned with the culture that would be less entitled. So I took that as a note. But I'm wondering what you think in your sort of thoughts and feelings about the evolution of our culture and this entitlement and how it's impacting business and culture in companies.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is really timeless. So culture is everything. The environment that we create in our business, just like I talked about within the family, it should be an environment of value creation. And when you ask a leader, and especially in large organizations, how do you create value for the organization? What would they say? And when you ask a non-supervisor or team member, how do you create value for the organization? What would they say? I mean, typically you get a job description list. I do these things, not how I create value. And so when I wrote this book, Your Most Important Number, I wanted something that would work for 80% of all teams in any company, any organization of any size, doesn't matter. And every team has one number that does two things. It's like playing a football game, right? What's that one number that says above all others are winning or losing the game and drives the majority of the right behaviors? What is that? They're both important. And every team gets to come up with their number, and they get to come up with the drivers, which represents the best work they're doing to improve it. And so, at the top of a for-profit company, it's typically profit or cash flow. If you're a startup, it might be lunch date is the most important number, and then it's users, and then it eventually evolves into profit or cash flow along those lines. But every team going through it. So when I think about HR, people management, all that, in larger companies, I've worked now with hundreds of companies installing the mind methodology, thousands of leaders, And when we work with the teams in HR, typically they say, well, the most important number is it's got to be engagement or retention. So, okay, well, remember, it's got to do two things. It's got to say above all that you're winning or losing and drive measure other behaviors. And when yours improves, it should improve the next one up and accrete all the way to the top of the organization. Makes total sense, right? And so let's play this out. Let's say it's retention. And you just hired me to run HR for this 5,000 employee organization. 3 years down the road, I am at 98%. I haven't lost anybody. Never mind that 70% of the people working here can't deliver on the outcome-based responsibilities for their role. Who cares about that? I won because this was my team's most important number. Oh, and by the way, we're going to go out of business because we had to give so much away to keep all those people. Well, a better, most important number in this one short, simple example would be the percentage of seats filled with capable people. You have all these roles, you have outcome-based responsibilities, usually no more than 2 or 3 that they need to achieve. There might be 30 capabilities that they have to be able to do to achieve those, but these are the outcomes they need to achieve. So when you look at all the roles, if you had 1,000 employees and 800 of the employees or team members are delivering or over-delivering and 20 are under-delivering, I'm at 80%. Gosh, I want to do better than that. Now it starts to drive all the behavior. So I'm recruiting better, I'm training better, I'm giving leaders the tools they need to develop people more effectively. I'm really embracing culture. And I would argue that people are sort of entitled to coming in. We're allowing it by not creating a winning team environment inside the company. It's fun to win. It just is. So even with my 500 plus employees in the aerospace company, everybody acted like the CEO of their own world. They all knew the numbers, looked you in the eye, shook your hand. I would take people through on tour and they go, what is this place? What are you guys drinking here? It was just fun. Everybody was running a business within the business or on a team that's in one of those businesses. So I think when you set that up, that's pretty timeless. It feels good. People would get offers for more money and they wouldn't leave. No way, I'm never leaving. And interestingly, I never had a leader quit on his own in all my journey in that aerospace world. Isn't that interesting? I did have one lead, but he told me when he came on board, once I get a position opens up in the Federal Aviation Administration, I really want to do this, it's my dream job. 2 years later, it came up, he left, wished him well, it was fantastic. That says a lot, right? So, Kate, I think the answer's in there. Happy to talk more about it if you ever want to.
First, thank you so much for talking today. Great food for thought. But I'm curious to know that when you were at your low point, when you started talking to me, you took on all this debt, you took on this amazing journey that you went on, but you didn't obviously know that at that time when you went to the owner and whoever it was that got in a little bit of trouble. What was it that you did to keep your mind in check during those hard times? I feel like as business owners, like you said, it's mindset, it's creating that culture, it's having the right people around you that believe and will bring value, but we can be our worst enemies. We can be our darkest and most horrible critics. And I'm sure that maybe that through this time, how do you keep your mind in check during those times?
So I love that question. So directionally, it's, as you sort of said it, at my low point, getting the company, almost going out of business, taking on all the debt and everything else. What got me through it is I started on that value creation cycle decades ago as a kid. So I struggled to get a capability, build my confidence, I created value from it, and I just kept building and building and building. So when that thing came up, even when I was kicked out of the house at the beginning of high school, I was already on the wheel for quite a while. I felt like there was nothing I couldn't do. Like literally nothing. And you take this new business, and a lot of startup founders, well, I've never done that before. How am I going to do that? Well, I had to write our own FAA repair station manual. I had to write the safety manuals that we had. I had to go out and peruse through contracts and make sure we got good deals with our customers. I've never done that stuff before. But because I said in my presentation at the end, learn to love and trust the struggle. When you struggle to get a capability, build confidence, and use that to actually create value, and you do it enough, and you take bigger steps every single time, in my mind, I was never going to fail. Like, it just never was going to because I did that. But if I wasn't used to that struggle, didn't trust it, And one of the guys that came on, he wasn't there when I went down to 3, but I think he was employee number 11. I asked him later, it's like, why did you come to work for us? And why did you stay with us as long as you did? And he made a lot of money too. He goes, because no matter what happened, no matter how rough it looked, you always had a way forward. I'm like, yeah, there is a way forward. Even if I can't think of it today, that doesn't mean it's not there. Right? There's always a better way, and your job as a leader, and especially as a founder, is to figure that out. So the more you get on this and you trust the struggle and your ability to get through it, the harder it gets. I get this weird warm feeling inside, like, oh, this is going to be so great when we come out the other side. Seriously. Not going to act like a victim. Not helpful to talk yourself off the cliff into whatever is below it. Not helpful at all. There's always a way. It's your job to find it. Find people to help you. Like, one of the things I did do, I wish I would have done, is got more mentors. Like, good mentors, there's a lot of bad mentors out there, but a good one that can really help out of the gate. I reinvented them over and over and over again. I didn't have to. I could have gone even faster. That would have been cool. But I love every minute of it. How I grew up, just everything's fantastic. Made me win. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I'm Professor Carter, but I own a private school. So one of the skills that we have to build in the 21st century is collaboration, right? So I had my employees come and say, hey boss, and I stop and I say, you're not your boss. You're not my employee. You collaborate with me, not collaborating with you. That's kind of the relationship keeping our company, collaboration. If you're not going to collaborate, then you can't be my employee. I'm not your boss. That's my feeling about company.
All right, so the question was, what skills should we be developing, or team members be developing, given staying where we're going? I think this is timeless as well. Develop the skill of whatever it takes to create value in your given situation. And I think similar to you in that, hey, we're all one team, here to create value. That's your job, this is my job. I'm going to do it the best I can. My best will change day to day. You should do the same. But what are the capabilities you need to be able to create value? Have to communicate, have to get alignment, have to get better at decision making, have to have a high degree of accountability doing what you said you would, when you said you would. One of the most, I would say the most impactful behavior when I was building my aerospace business was being respectful, honest, and straightforward. Because what normally happens, this is great for some capability to get. What normally happens when two people start arguing, if one team member approached an engineer and said, I've got this great idea, and the engineer said, that's ridiculous, and you're not allowed to bring it up because you're not an engineer, what typically happens? They go different directions, and they hold resentment and everything else. But because we had that behavior, the employee that approached the engineer would say, I get it, you're right, I don't know, but I think this is really good. And they remain respectful, honest, and straightforward, even when the other person's being a jerk, and come out the other side having created more value. Because some part or all of the idea got across the finish line, and we got the bottom line result. So, for me, the single biggest skill is to develop a value creation mindset, and if you're looking at how do we create value as a team when you go through that process, you'll discover what you need for the nuances and exactly what that team needs. All right. Is there another question? I think we've got a couple minutes left if there's another one.
Yeah, to kind of switch gears slightly a little bit. Maybe the people that are starting a business or a company and the people that are looking for funding. So one of the things you mentioned, and it seems like it should be obvious, when you said you get pitched all the time, right? So, like you say, if someone goes with my goal is X amount of dollars, you immediately discredit them. More what you say you look for is value. What value are you providing? Which theoretically makes sense, but as you can tell, obviously a lot of people fall around that. So I was just curious to hear more about if you want to expand on that briefly, if someone is to pitch, what do you look for? What does a good pitch to an investor look like? What if there's anything else other than value? You hear, maybe that's the only answer. There's something you hear when you say yes, that person, that idea. What does a good investor pitch look like to you, maybe?
I'm looking for proof of value. And somebody speaking confidently, it's going to happen. absolutely this and all of it, that means nothing to me. Often it's the worst. And I'm sure nobody in here is playing the game this way, but 8 or 9 out of 10 that pitch me are more interested in playing the game of being the startup founder than actually creating value. And I kind of said that earlier. That's the biggest thing I look for. Are you passionate about really making a difference in the world? And it makes sense. It's thought through, and you've got some provable, scalable traction. Show me what it is. You know, I was walking in, I heard an idea from somebody in the audience here, and I thought, man, I would actually try that. But that wasn't the complete answer. The complete answer is, what a great idea. I would love to have access to that, but what's the experience going to be like? And will it cost more than my perceived value of it going in, right? But we're never told that. So we ask people about our idea, and so, yeah, it sounds great. Awesome. Oh, we got something here. Let's raise a bunch of money and go build it. They will come. Right? It worked in the Field of Dreams movie. Didn't go past that. But that's the other thing you have to go for. So, like, you love the idea. Well, how would you like to experience it? What would that be like? And you kind of walk through that. And you don't need a bunch of technology and build a bunch of stuff to do a mock experience, right? You can kind of go through that. And then what would be a price point that, you know, it doesn't exceed your perceived value for doing it? But for me, it's all about the value. If it's all about the hockey stick graph and they all have it, woo, so great, look at that. It's going to be amazing. They can do a spreadsheet and simple exponential math. That almost never happens. But literally 8 or 9 out of 10 are more interested in playing the game. I just need money and it'll be good. No, it won't. It'll probably be worse. It'll really screw up your decision making. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Just to add on the point of traction, do you mind giving an example of like what good traction looks like? Like, how do you evaluate how much traction would make sense for an investor to understand somebody would want this as a value?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to vary by investor going in. But if you have an idea for a service or a product and you focus group it, and you figured out a way, and you've all heard this statement, do something that doesn't scale, we'll figure out what will scale. You figured out a way to get them to kind of prove it, where they pay for it in some way, right? You know, like even my business, before I went down this road of the mind methodology and trying to package this so we could scale it, and we're finally there. I just went out and sold my time with senior leader groups and different size companies to discover what would go on, and I could sell easily $100,000 a month in just my time. And I kind of worked paying for stuff. But whatever the product or service is, while I was figuring it out, but whatever the product or service is there a way to get people to go over their dollars? And that's kind of what I'm interested in. Like, if you do this, I'll do that. Don't just say it. Where's the letter of intent, or where's the binding agreement that if you deliver these 3 things, I'll actually do it? So that's what I'm looking for. And like I said on one of the slides, never confuse enthusiasm for product market fit. Never confuse enthusiasm for capability. By the way, when you're hiring people are much better at selling themselves than they are doing the thing most of the time.
So we're talking about value, but what do you define as valuable? What would be an example of value?
Of value?
Like, because we went around the word value. Just the definition of what you define as value.
Yeah, win-win value. So if you and I do an exchange, we're exchanging our accumulated best efforts. So you've been working, you have money set aside based on your best efforts. I have a product that I put together with my best efforts or a service. You see enough value in it to actually buy it, and my business model actually makes sense. Right? So there's going to be something left over that makes sense. That's it. It's a win-win exchange of value, and it can never be, in my opinion, win-lose, or it's not value creation. It can't be win-lose. You can't win and I lose, or vice versa. Losers won't hang out very long, and it just stops. Yes, sir.
Is there like a timeline or a horizon for the value proposition as an investor? That I feel like it's okay, I want an ROI in 10 years on this one after it. Like my example, we're building something that has value, but it's like a long way out. Is that just like an instant no, or is it just yes, it's value, and it's not 90% of the time.
It depends on the investor. Like if the investor really knows your space and they've invested in that space and they get everything in your industry or whatever it is, I don't know what it is, they may be willing to do it based on the case that you make. But I still think it's okay to say we haven't figured it out, but I think we will. And here's the team, and to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, you want to invest and you believe in our ability to figure it out, and we'd love for your brain to jump in here and help us. So every investor is going to be different. I like to find, for our clients, we've got quite a few startups, I like to find investors that know their space so they can actually be helpful. Okay, one more question and we'll wrap it up.
So I guess piggybacking off that, like what's the, most risk for a potential startup that you're willing to invest in that you, what's the lowest threshold of them not really having everything kind of planned out or taken care of, infrastructure-wise and data-wise, but you still see their value proposition as being, true, as in, conceivably likeliest to pan out, but they're still needing, all the bells and whistles and to actually source data and have enough financial leverage and with the capital to actually start building that infrastructure to source the data that's actually going to legitimize them in your eyes further down the line. But they're just going to, really murky, very kind of avant-garde fringe spots. And they're trying to get that into the real world, so to speak. So, what's the most amount of risk with that?
Over 90% of the ideas with the right team are executable. And even just like my aerospace company, which started out as an electric lighting company, that was 100% of what we did. When I sold it, it was less than 0.002% of what we did, right? Because it could pivot and do other things. So what is the risk? Every investor is going to be different, but we're looking for a believable story. It's not, okay, these parameters are met, so we throw our money in. I'm interested in how passionate the founders are in creating real value in the world and how connected they are to it. Again, most of them are, we just need to raise money and everything will be great. No, it won't. It just won't. But when times are really good, during COVID and this giant wealth transfer from the middle class, there is so much what I call dumb money out there. There are good times where you can raise a lot of money. Right now is not one of those times. I'm watching one after another dry up because dumb money's scared and the smart investors would never do it unless there's a good enough story. But for me, it's all about that. And those investors that just like the idea and $1 million may be no big deal to them, but I think every dollar should be spent investing smartly. So I didn't directly fully answer your question, but I think it's in there.
Let's give it up to Lee.